Hey everyone, I'm so glad to be here late on a Saturday night, but I was asked by a woman, Erin Siegel, to please speak on regarding this issue of parental alienation. Probably a really great time to just be really clear. I suffered. My ex, my abuser, my coercive controller actually alienated, quote unquote, my children from me. And when I realized what was going on, I didn't know for 8 or 9 years. So the abusers will start day one, as far as I'm concerned. They start undermining and diminishing the protective parent over and over again. And when they do that, the protective parent who thinks they're in a loving relationship cannot even imagine all of the things going on behind the scenes. I certainly didn't. Maybe some people do. It's like a cult, I say. And these abusers are cult leaders, and the children just sometimes line up. What I would say is that it's super important, and it's dark here because it's late on a Saturday night. But what I would say is that I dove deep into all things parental alienation. And then I had a recognition that the person who actually created the term or the theory parental alienation syndrome is actually a person who supported child predators. My work at the age of 19 started with advocating on behalf of domestic abuse and child sexual abuse victims. That's why I became engaged in this process. I spoke on the steps of Waterbury, Connecticut against child pornography at the age of 20. This is important things for me, like the work against child predators. A little aside, I don't believe all coercive controllers are child predators, but I do believe all child predators are coercive controllers. And they use the same tactics of coercion and control. And sometimes the courts become complicit in that. Back to parental alienation. Of course, quote unquote alienation occurs. It's a horrific thing. I believe it's one of the most heartbreaking things a human being can imagine, can experience. People don't understand it. They don't understand that your children have been turned against you, and abusers literally prey upon our children to do this. That being said, the alienation industry is making money, is profiting over reuniting children with their abusers. And frankly, maybe the other parent isn't an abuser, but we cannot coerce children into a place where they don't feel safe, even if their feelings of unsafety have to do with a false narrative. What we have to do is provide them with critical thinking. We have to give them understanding from their protective parent's point of view, giving them unconditional love, positive regard, the ability to be authentic. That's how they get clarity. Coercing them is not going to work. If you do any research on deprogramming victims of cults, what we know is extremely harmful and hard. And what it can do is actually make someone dig their heels in more and align with someone who might be an abuser. I do not condone this at all. Does alienation, quote unquote, occur? Yes. Did the person who created the syndrome, was this person basically evil? Yes. And so how do we handle this? I call it a malicious fracturing of attachment. It comes from a clinical perspective. What we know about attachment is every child needs to have a secure attachment to a caretaker. And certainly there's some experiences where they don't need to have that. But overall, most children, hey Maggie, most children need to have a secure attachment to a primary caretaker. And abusers rob children of this. They do, because they weaponize the children. And so what is that? That's child abuse. That's what it is. And it's malicious. They intend to do it, fracturing of the attachment that every child deserves and needs, virtually every child. Tips on how to best validate a child without agreeing to a false narrative. The best thing to do is when they come to you and they're telling you something that happened and you don't agree, you can just say, you know what, sweetheart, I don't think that's true. Use I statements. I don't think that's true. Or you can say things like when they tell you something that is true and it's scary and they're afraid, they don't want to go with the abuser. Okay, no problem. Let's just do this. I'm so sorry that's happening. I wish I could change it. I'm here for you. Simple, really simple. Let them know that they're seen. Don't walk around the elephant in the room. No, acknowledge the elephant without disparaging the abuser, without actually telling them you'll keep them safe when you perhaps cannot keep them safe. This is a scary thing. So what are your top 3 questions for parents who are seeking to hire an ethical professional? I actually have a PDF on my website. Here comes Maggie. I have a PDF on my website that actually talks about the questions to ask. Now, I'll tell you, I've had people use this questionnaire and still find that they've had therapists and professionals who are still in collusion. And so this PDF is not a guarantee, but you have a right to ask questions and you have a right to discern whether or not someone is going to be helpful or not. And frankly, there's no guarantee they're going to be helpful, but at least inquiring is helpful. Empowering yourself, standing in your personal power, at least that is helpful. So go to the PDF on my website that actually details a lot of questions. It's pretty detailed. I'm like, literally, if I'm going to hire a therapist for a child who's been abused by a coercive controller, man, there's going to be a lot of questions. There are definitely going to be a lot of questions. And what insights and questions can parents ask to ensure a professional understands? Same questionnaire. Same questionnaire. I would be very succinct, though. I actually have another, it's called a guide to what to tell providers. 5 questions, like 5 statements. We can't sit there and say we're an abuse victim, even though we are. No, this is interesting because people say, then you're telling me to walk on eggshells around these like court professionals. No, I'm not. Eggshells is you're behaving a certain way out of fear. But when we actually engage with these providers and we actually know that they might turn against us, that's called personal power. Take the 10,000-foot view, give them just succinct information. Thank you so much for your willingness to support our family. My ex and I have divorced because the relationship was unhealthy, and I'm worried about our children. Or I'm worried about our child, and I'm hopeful you can help us. I'm hopeful you can help us come to some kind of resolution. And so that in and of itself is very succinct. Those statements are on my guide. I think there's 5 of them. I maybe just gave you 4, but you get the idea. Lastly, what are your professional perspectives about Kaden's law? Listen, prior to 2022, we did not have one law in the country that prioritized the safety and well-being of children. Not one. In Connecticut, it was 14. The safety and well-being of children in custody was 14. Now, we know abusers are drawn towards conflict. We have research that proves that. We know over and over again that custody disputes are actually domestic abuse. Absolutely. We know that coercive control, the underpinning of all abuse, is oftentimes when children are engaged, weaponizing children, that women are less safe after they leave than they are in their own home. We know all of these things. Kaden's law needs to be implemented, full throttle. We need to make sure that judges are getting trained, but frankly, they need to be trained in coercive control, and they need to be trained in the pathology of abusers. Big missing component as far as I'm concerned worldwide, not with Kaden's law, but in general. We need to be like saying, listen, this is how these abusers show up. So when you see this person come into your courtroom, this is what you should be looking for. That's really important. And then also psychological trauma to children, that this intergenerational trauma can be prevented. So I hope that's helpful. I hope I've done my task. It looks like I have, and I hope y'all have a great day. Bye.